So next on our agenda, we have Akif Saeed, the Chairman, Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan. Please welcome him to the stage.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'll start with congratulating nutshell Asfar Ahmed, Rabia Ahmed, sponsors, promoters and partners for the 8th Future Summit. It's very rare that you are asked to speak and you are not given any topic to speak on. But I thought about 2 or 3 areas, and I was extremely lucky. The session just ended, talked about diversity, something which I will be talking about. And then Atkinson mentioned in terms of his research, he touched upon 2 areas. One was the technology, of course, and then the traditionalism, which the survey actually pointed out as a difference between the countries, and the Pakistan stands out vis-a-vis the other countries. And then Mark talked about passwords. I'm already sick and tired of, in terms of the passwords I have to save and the length. I hope some other way of logging in would be in place by the time quantum computing comes into play. I'll touch on areas from a regulator's perspective. There are 2 broad areas I'll talk about. One is, which was discussed with Zafar Masood also, is the ESG, the context, and second would be the digitalization. When we talk about ESG, I think Pakistan as a country with a median age of 20 and 2/3 population below 30, we have to have every corporate, every business enterprise has to have a youth and a gender policy. We have to work towards, and every policy aspect has to be from the prism of these 2 fundamental pillars in terms of ESG, particularly the social aspect. With the female participation at the lowest compared to regional and the global averages, I think as a regulator, we have done the studies and we have started practicing internally also. Sort of something I want to highlight as a corporate body, we have female participation at 28%, and we are targeting 2030 to take it to 40%. So I think as a regulator, we have started it from charity begins at home, and we want all the corporates, be it banking and other businesses, all the businesses have to have a gender policy when it comes to. Similarly, youth, with the youth bulge, but there has to be a policy aspect to it. I'm pleased to report that as a regulator in the last 4 years, we have reduced our average age from 45 to 40. The idea is to further bring in youth because the problems and the areas we are discussing is related to youth, so the policy input can't be complete without their participation. Atkinson touched on another area was the climate change, and this is where ESG, the sustainability standards come into play. As a regulator, we have adopted awareness or participatory approach rather than as a regulatory approach, setting up a timeline or a directive. What we are asking is, or taking steps where the market should be able to compare themselves to understand what steps our market taking or different players in the market are taking, and they can do through a guidelines, create awareness, and make the businesses sensitive to what is heading their way. In terms of ESG, we have set up a portal by the name of ESG Sustain. It is live. I would strongly recommend all the people there, participants, to visit that, to understand and to see what corporate sectors are doing in the context of ESG. It will be formally launched during this month, but it is live for the public to have a look at it. Then is the S1 and S2 sustainability standards. Instead of sort of coming up adopting adoption roadmap, we have gone through a survey which is open, and now we are analyzing the responses we have received, and accordingly we would be taking steps in terms of adopting it and then taking it forward. When it comes to digitalization, normally people talk about fintech. I think from a regulator's perspective, I'm going to talk about RegTech. So we, as a regulator, believe at SECP that by adopting technology, the cost of compliance is something which, and our headache in terms of supervision goes down substantially. And this is why we have come up with a framework, a digital-only framework for insurance, for brokerage houses, and for AMCs. And one example in terms of AMC, the cost in terms to the investor is 1/4 compared to the traditional AMCs. So I believe with the youth bulge and digitalization sinks in both in terms of the cost itself, cost to the investor, and the outreach through the digital means that can be achieved. Another area where we have you use the digitalization and you will see increasing trend towards is the onboarding. So be it the mutual fund industry, insurance, or brokerage house, we have already in collaboration with Central Depository launched Central Gateway Portal, which can be white labeled and it's a white label product which can be adopted by different intermediaries in the market. The last bit is the company's ordinance or the activities under the Companies Act, which is beyond the entities which we license. Only day before we launched electronic mortgage register, which will enable the banks to look at the charges which are already there or the ranking, and they can work out the ranking in terms of the charge or the security they have created, the assets of the company. We believe that will help to process the credit in a much more efficient manner. There was a talk about AI. In our own limited capacity, one area which is pretty much manual at this moment is the name reservation of the company. We have developed an NI AI model. We are testing it internally. Hopefully next month, the beta version will be out, and going forward, we want to eliminate the human intervention and make the whole process of company incorporation seamless. Two another areas where we have used digitalization as a process is the change in the directorship and the shareholding of the company. These are the two disputes. Normally, a private limited company starts as a family and friend venture, and they do fell apart. Normally, they fell apart once the company grows in size or the next generation comes in. These are the areas which we are using technology, and we will be using CDC as for shareholding purposes. For directorship, that's already in place, whereby the incoming and outgoing director have to use a PIN to acknowledge or give the consent when it comes to change in the directorship. Last area which I'm personally very keen and heading it personally is the review of the company law itself. And that is primarily being done from the prism of the new technologies. We are in touch with international counterparts around the globe. Idea is to now amend the regulatory or the legal statutes in a way that we were able to adopt the new technologies and do the processes and the systems, and particularly the compliance part, the RegTech part, in a manner so that we don't have to be intrusive as a regulator, particularly where we are not issuing a license. It's a company doing different types of businesses, so the compliance is much easier compared to the traditional mode we are doing it. And I think with that, I'll thanks again the sponsors and the Nutshell Group for inviting, and of course look forward to post this session to take any questions on a one-to-one basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Akif. What an impactful message to leave everyone here with today. Next on our agenda, we have another highly important speaker. We are being joined by Senator Dr. Musadik Malik, the Federal Minister for Energy, the Petroleum Division. Please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you very much for having me over. I have rarely felt as incoherent as I feel right now. I just flew in, I was traveling all night and just got to the airport and came straight here. And I felt I was reading the title of the summit, the Future Summit and What Matters Now. That's also kind of incoherent. We should be talking about what would matter then rather than what matters now. But we know that if you sincerely look at this topic, it's almost challenging you to write the history of future. It is asking you what the future is going to look like. And therefore, what do you need to do now to be a player in that future? It's like most of the times when you go someplace, they ask you strategically, what can you do? Given your strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats, all of those cliched frameworks, what can you do? But I think this workshop is challenging us in a very different manner. It is asking us, what would it take, not what you can do. And the answers to these two questions are completely different. The answer to what you can do sometimes may have the same starting point, but has nothing to do with what it would take to build something special, build a future, build something different. We all know that future is anything but the continuity of the present. Future is discontinuous. I'm saying future is always or mostly discontinuous. And the best way of gathering that is to talk to your children who are Gen Z, or I don't know, there's some other words as well. I don't get it. And they tell me that I don't get it. And I truly don't get it. But when you speak with your own children, you realize how discontinuous the future can be. When I try to tell my children that when we were growing up, there were these clunky black telephones in which you had to dial them and then they came back, and when you tell them that there was a world in which there were no cell phones, they cannot imagine it. Anyone who was born at the turn of this century cannot imagine a world in which there was no instant connectivity. And we're not talking about centuries ago. We're not talking about 50 years ago. We're talking about right now, like yesterday, when your child was born. When your child was born, it was impossible to imagine a world in which there would be a phone which would not have a cable. If there's no cable, then how does the voice go? And these are real questions. If you went back to the 1980s, 70s, and you said there'd be a phone which would not have a wire attached to it, you'd, at least for someone like myself, lame person like myself, you'd throw me off. And now exactly in that spirit, my children cannot imagine that actually there was a world in which people were not connected. So how did people speak? And people don't speak, people text. So how did people text? And that just tells you how discontinuous the world and the future is going to be. My father used to tell me that there was a time when there was no penicillin. And if you had infection and you fell sick, you died. If your body immunity kicked in, you survived. If it didn't kick in, you died. And then people thought penicillin was a miracle. Was it a miracle? Look at the kind of medications that you have right now. You're growing organs in Petri dishes. How can you grow organs in Petri dishes? Organs are supposed to be within humans or within organisms. How can you walk into a lab and grow an organ in a Petri dish? That's crazy. But that craziness has crept in. From death to penicillin, and penicillin to the kind of science that we're doing right now, it's like magic. And you can look at any number of things. You can think, could we have imagined? I could not have imagined that there'd be cars without fuels. How could there be cars without gasoline? Oh, I'm also the Minister of Petroleum, so I'm conflicted here. But seriously, even if I'm conflicted and you take it as a prejudicial view, think about cars without drivers. How could there be cars without drivers? How could there be cars without fuel? What the hell is going on? So no matter how you look at it from the telephony perspective, you look at it from the medical sciences perspective, you look at it from the automotives, mobility, connectivity perspective, you find only one thing. Future is anything but the linear projection of the present. So if all of these discontinuities have come about within the time frame in which your youngest or the oldest was born to date, which was just about yesterday, you got out of college, you got married, you went to the hospital, you pulled the kid out, you didn't know how to fit the car seat, and now look at them, and they tell you, you don't get me. And they're right, I truly don't get them. But they're not going to get it either. They are also not going to get it. And that's the genius of the future. So the future has to be built based upon something resilient. And that resilience is what we need right now. Resilience now for a future that we don't know jack about. Because that's what it is. People who are in, what year is this? What year is this, sir? 2024, 25, some year like that. People who are going to graduate now are going to retire in 45 years. We don't know what 5 years are going to look like. How are these kids going to figure out? And these are not the kids born now. Kids born now would retire in 65, 70 years. I'm talking about people who are graduating now. They're going to go on till, God knows, 40 more years, 2065, 75. We don't know what 2030 is going to look like. I'm just coming from the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and they have a vision 2030. We don't know what 35 is going to look like, and they're going to retire in 45 years. So our only hope in hell is to build resilience in our system. If you look at the present now, all of the things that I'm talking about, things that I've alluded to, they're primarily grounded in 4, 5, 6 platforms. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm exhaustive about them or I know these platforms. But it's very clear that biotechnology is going to change the way we think about life and death. And many people believe that death would be treated as a disease. I think, and I hope we'd be more graceful and gracious and let go. But having said that, there are scientists, there are people who believe that death is going to be negotiated in petri dishes. We are already kind of having designer babies. You can already do gene manipulation to have certain kind of attribute in your baby. That's already happening. So, very clearly, with this biotechnology, our sense of life, illness, death, all of it is going to get negotiated at some point in time. I mean, I'm not going to negotiate death because I'm a believer, but it's not very difficult for me to believe that if not my daughter, her children would live for much longer, maybe a couple of 100 years. Why not? I mean, look at penicillin. It was 34 years, it's 70 years now. If it's 70 years now, why won't it be 140 years? And then why would it not be 200 years? It's only a matter of time, especially with the way the science is evolving. So the complexities that kind of aging would introduce, we'll have to deal with that complexity. Similarly, right now, what all you see in the way of miniaturization, in the way of convergence of technologies, is articulating itself in the way of nanotechnology. And that's happening. You already have these machines which are doing 3D printing and so on and so forth. So there's no rocket science there. These are things that are happening now. When you look at connectivity, you have these smart cities. I was in California, and you go there in California. I mean, I was in China, and no one carries any currency. There's no need for currency. I mean, mobility. You're walking around with your bank account in your hands, you do this, and you're done. California is a little bit more advanced. You go there, and there's something out there. There's no person. You walk into a store, you pick something up, it charges your account. You've just picked it up. Then you put it back, and the charge goes back. And when you walk out, whatever you walk out with gets charged to your account. It's happening now. It's happening now. This is the level of connectivity that we have now, not in times to come. So we may be 4 years behind them, 5 years behind them. My daughter, I took her to Macy's. She didn't know how to shop. She freaked out. She said, what do you mean you go to a store to shop? I know what I want. I'll order it. It would be delivered. And I couldn't imagine a world in which I buy things that I can't touch, feel, don't go to store, walk around, figure out what I like and how to buy it. And she freaked out because I took her to a store. So imagine what is happening in the way of connectivity, in the way of our experiences, in the way we make our choices. It's crazy. And then I'm not even going to begin to talk about the artificial intelligence. I hope we don't run into another cold, long winter of artificial intelligence, because we've run into it 3 or 4 times. But it appears that we are on to something right now. Probably not cognition, but we are on to figuring out patterns in a very different way from the way in which I learned statistics and prediction. Very different way. They're not using variables to predict. They're looking at patterns and walking them backwards. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? A whole different way of figuring things out. So all of this is happening as we speak now. And as I said, we don't know what the future. I'm scratching my head because I wanted to scratch, but also I'm scratching my head for the future. I have no idea what it's going to look like. But I have one idea that I'd like to present to you. I'd like you to know that no matter how far back you go, there's no biotechnology without biology. Not possible. There's no nanotechnology without physics. Not possible. There's no computer science without math. Not possible. So these basic, the building blocks, what I call resilience, is in your education. You don't have education? This is a fiction book. This is science fiction. You may as well read a chapter in some storybook that as Pakistan moves forward, there would be nanotechnology, and we have these incubators, and we have these innovation centers, and we have all of these things that we talk about. What about the dropout rates? What about the school enrollment rates? What about the completion rates? What about the quality of higher education? What are we talking about? Are we joking? Do you know how many kids don't finish 5th grade education? This young man knows. He's written books about it. Kids who don't make it to school, ever. And here, we're talking about future and what matters now. This is what matters now. The quality of education matters. Your understanding of math, your understanding of biology, your understanding of chemistry, your understanding of physics, your understanding of philosophy, your understanding of art, all of these things matter. Creativity is not science. Science is needed as a building block. Creativity is horizontal and diagonal. It comes from integration of all of what history teaches you, what art teaches you, what aesthetics are, how you mix them with science, how you imagine. How do you teach someone how to imagine? By teaching them math? Probably not. So it's an integrated view. And we talk about the universities, university education. I mean, when you talk about biotechnology, you're not talking about 3rd grade education. You're going to talk about university education, and lots of people talk about university education. What is higher education without general education? Tell me. How are you going to compensate for 12 years of garbage in 4 years of college? So you'll have to go back to build that resilience. And that resilience is in education. So every kid dropped from college, from school. Every kid not enrolled, every kid not making it to 5th grade education is a loss of future. And this education is grounded in poverty, is grounded in communities, is grounded in healthcare systems. The biggest cause of regressing into poverty is illness. The biggest cause of regression into poverty. It takes you 2 generations to pull yourself out, and then 1 episode of illness, and you've regressed back 2 generations. That cow, a herd of sheep, all that you had for your livelihood gone. If it's a daughter, you let her go. If it's a boy, you sell. But look at what kind of future we are building. These are empirical truths. So my friends, if we're going to talk about the future, paradoxically we'll have to talk about now. And because we don't know what the future is going to look like, we're going to build resilience now. And the resilience is not unidimensional. Education may be single most important vector, but this education is grounded in the community, grounded in healthcare system, grounded in rights of the people. And in a country like Pakistan, rights of the poor people. This country is a poor country. Most of the people are poor. This country belongs to the poor. This resilience will have to be built into our communities, into our poor communities, because that's where our future is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. The future needs to be based on resilience, and the quality of education is what matters now. Truly, truly inspiring words, and we're so grateful for you for traveling here straight from the plane, so thank you for joining us today. We're truly grateful. So next up today, we have another incredibly inspiring session, an incredibly impactful person. So could we please welcome to the stage Dr. Ishrat Husain, NIHI, author, economist, former federal minister, and governor, state of Pakistan. Now, before he joins us, Dr. Ishrat Husain is an icon. After spending his career at the World Bank in different regions, he returned back to Pakistan and served as the governor of SBP. He also served as the federal minister and the dean of Institute of Business Administration. He is also the author of several books and a regular contributor for national and international publications, as well as international conferences globally. He is also an avid supporter and a regular contributor of Nutshell conferences in Pakistan. So please give him a warm welcome to the stage.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, let me thank Nutshell, Unity Foods, and particularly Asfar Hassan for again providing me this opportunity to address this very august and distinguished gathering. It's always a pleasure to come and attend and listen to the conversations which take place on these conferences and summits. And this has become a feature which I look forward to. So I want to congratulate you for continuing this tradition. After my friend Musadik Malik's speech, I don't have very much to add. He has already said what I was planning to emphasize in my few minutes of discourse. I think the topic is very pertinent. If we have to embark on a journey for the future, we don't know the destination, but we have to prepare ourselves today in order to embark on the journey. Is it a hiking? Is it a skiing? Where is it sailing? We don't know that, because the world of the future has 4 attributes which have not been seen before. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Therefore, the answers to the problems which we are facing today and which we are going to face tomorrow are not known. The jobs which existed 10 years ago are no longer going to be in place in next 5 years. And what kind of new jobs we are going to have in the future with all the AI, quantum computing, robotics, biotechnology, we just have no idea at all. Not only the technological advances are making our lives difficult and complex to predict for the future, there are other areas of concern. And as a development economist, I used to take great pride that between 1990 and 2015, globalization, international integration of markets, international financial flows have actually helped the developing countries to lift 1.2 billion people out of poverty. There were 2 billion people in 1990 who were living below the poverty line. By 2015, and a lot of people don't realize that the Millennium Development Goals, which ended in 2015, the highest success factor was poverty, because we exceeded the target for the poverty reduction. The living standards of the poor countries really went up. Life expectancy, infant mortality, maternal mortality, adult education, literacy rates, you look at all the indicators, and all those indicators actually were quite impressive. But come 2016, and we have a different ball game altogether. And we have now a new president who laid the foundation for this, what I call as the inward-looking strategy. MEGA, Make America Great Again. This inward-looking strategy is based on protectionism, not that the markets should be open and whosoever is competitive in the markets should be able to capture the share. We have been taught by the Western countries to open up our markets to integrate with the rest of the world. But when it comes now that their shoe is pinching, there is a movement all over the Western countries to ban, to impose tariffs in order to discourage the goods and services of the developing countries reaching out to the Western world. This deglobalization, this protectionism, this recourse to industrial policy is going to make our lives very difficult in the future. Then you have the climate change risk. Pakistan is not an emitting country, but it is a vulnerable country. Its food, energy, and water nexus depends on the glacier melting in the Himalayas. There are 3 mountains which all combine in Gilgit-Baltistan and which are the source of our water usage. Indus River gets all its water from there. The floods, the droughts, the torrential rains, these are just going to completely eliminate the existing patterns of agriculture. We haven't done very much in order to develop the heat-resistant, the drought-resistant, and the pest-resistant varieties. We haven't done anything on conserving water. We are still wasting 50% of our water through this irrigation canal system, which is actually flooding some of the land and creating waterlogging, while the tailenders, who are the poor people, are deprived of water. So climate change, and the last reservoirs we made was in 1973 with the completion of Tarbela Dam. So we have only Tarbela and Mangla, and we don't have the water reservoirs in order to capture that and release it during the winter season. The third element, which can be positive for Pakistan, is the demographic changes taking place. Pakistan has a youth bulge. We all know this has now become a very pat topic all over. But Japan, which was ethnically pure, a monolithic country which avoided the foreigners to enter for immigration purposes, has now a fertility decline of 0.7% every year. 2 adults have to support 1 old person. They have now opened up the doors to the developing countries in order to supplement their labor force. Korea, having done wonders during the last 40, 50 years, has also been struck with the shortage of labor. And those of you who know economics, there are only 2 elements for sustained growth: labor and labor productivity. So if labor is declining and labor productivity is stagnant or even on the downward slope, the countries will not be able to grow. Germany now is the third new entrant to this demographic change. This is the engine of growth for the rest of Europe. After Brexit, Britain is no longer part of this European Union, and France has not done as well as people were expecting. Therefore, most of the development in Europe has been through Germany. Germany has been hit by the energy problems because Russia was a major supplier of energy to Germany, and after the Ukraine war, that has actually changed. So we have a problem that Germany is also looking for labor, which is a skilled labor, by the way, not unskilled labor, and this goes on and on. So if we really want to make a productive use of our youth bulge, we have to train them tailor-made to the requirements of each country. And that requires a strong coordination mechanism. And we have suffered from coordination mechanisms in this country. The federal and the provincial governments are blaming each other. The government is blaming the private sector. The private sector is blaming the government officials and the bureaucracy. And the judiciary is unhappy with the executive, and the executive is unhappy with judiciary. This is not the way coordination takes place. The 3 countries which have really done well, Japan, Korea, and China, they are examples of collaboration, cooperation. That's why they called Japan Inc., Korea Inc., and China Inc. China has done what Mr. Musadik Malik just pointed out. By 2000, The number of STEM graduates, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics graduates produced annually in China were less than half that of the United States. By 2010, the number actually equaled. The same number of STEM graduates were coming out of China as of US. 2020, China is producing 3 million graduates every year in STEM subjects, and the US is producing only 840,000. According to a study by one of the think tanks in Australia, out of 25 emerging technologies, China is ahead in 22 of those technologies, and 3 of them, the US is leading. 50% of the engineering and science PhD students in the top US universities, MIT, Caltech, Georgia Tech, they were all from China. And they go back and they start their own laboratories, their own research facilities, and China is way ahead. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to emphasize, I've been writing this for the last few years, that we start from school today, because what matters now is going to take us to a future which is bright, or business as usual, or a downward slope. And you have to start teaching your students science and mathematics right from the school days. And then give them the chance for specialization in technical and vocational subjects. And our universities should have more facilities, more allocations of resources for the science, technology, engineering subjects, because that is the basis for the future knowledge acquisition, assimilation, and application. If we do not pay attention right now, today, I think we will be losing the battle of this world in which every country is part of a global village and is going to compete with each other. So my final submission is that we have to bring back these 25 million kids out of school. We have to suppress this 40% stunting rate of our children who would lose their cognition and cognitive skills when they grow up, and how can they contribute to the development of this country. So this is where I leave you with thoughts. The journey begins today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to our session chairman, Dr. Ishrat Husain. You truly are an icon, and we are so grateful for your contributions to Nutshell conferences, so thank you. We start from school today. That is what matters now. I can't quite believe that I'm about to say this, but we have made it to the final session. Our closing address is by Air Chief Marshal Sohail Aman. He is a retired 4-star general and former Chief of Air Staff of the Pakistan Air Force, serving until March 18th, 2018. An accomplished fighter pilot, he has flown over 3,000 hours, including missions in F-16s, and played a key role in Operation Zab-i-Zab. He led PAF's modernization, initiating projects like the Aviation City, Aerospace Center, and Air Power Center of Excellence, focusing on R&D and the development of indigenous aviation technology, including Project ACM for 5th-generation fighter aircraft. A graduate of PAF War College, Royal College of Defense Studies, and Harvard Kennedy School. He holds 2 master's degrees in strategic studies and international relations. Decorated with top honors, including Nishan-e-Imtaz Military and the US Legion of Merit, he now contributes to a leading financial institution and civic development projects, whilst also studying governance and leadership. Please welcome him to the stage for the final session of the 8th edition of the Summit. Thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, we are such honored here to have Dr. Ishrat, Madam Shamshad. They're the icons of this country, and they've contributed so immensely. Madam and sir, we're very grateful for your contributions to this country, and we are really very, very proud of you. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, let me congratulate all of you here for a downpour of 2 days continuous intellectual activity. You endured through it, you went through it, and let me say that very, very honestly. It's so gratifying to see our over 25 foreign speakers, colleagues who've been here. A lot of them have been coming here frequently and opening that window of conversation and what's happening around the world and what's happening here and how do you go forward. Believe you me, the kind of questions which were asked in the last 2 days showed a complete clarity in the corporate, public sector, and the government officials of what's wrong, what needs to be done. I thought there was no difference here on opinion as far as the technology was concerned, human being development was concerned, HRD skills or whatever. So I congratulate each one of you for participating in the summit. Very well done. Great. Our own speakers here again added huge value, and for Asfar, I think when you sit back in your rocking chair sometime without your mobile phone, you need to be very comfortable, proud for what you have done. So what you have done to this country, the way you've contributed, and with the resilience that you continue to add on step by step. And why I say this is, from first edition to the 8th edition, the travel that we have seen, it's phenomenal in terms of technology. I would also, as an elder, feel extremely satisfied on the Nutshell team, we usually call it Nutshell family, for being so integrated and working 24/7, and the purpose is only one, uplift of this country, and that's about it. Ladies and gentlemen, let me start with a small story about future. It is the nth number of time me and the Senator Musadik are talking in the last session, and every time we both come up with stories. It was in 2007 that I was doing my RCDS, Royal College of Defense Studies, as a student. And we were taught, this is the highest seat of learning on defense. We were taught about the world crisis and what will China be in 10 years and what will be Iraq there, if you remember the 2007. And we studied, and this is the highest seat of learning, and we had professors from the best universities of the world. In 2017, I was in the chair. I was asked to go back and lecture in the same college. And I had only one point to deliver there. And I said, look, in 2007, we studied about future, what we're talking now. And 2017, I stand here to tell you that whatever we thought did not happen. How uncertain the future is, how unpredictable the future is, that is what you need to realize as leaders. And of course, I know there are corporate leaders sitting here, the public sector, and even on the political side. Just know, whatever that you plan for future, it won't happen that way. You will have to be prepared for variations. You will have to be prepared for contingencies. We never thought COVID will come. It did. We don't know how would the land in our country phase out to be. Would it be earthquakes, floods, or whatever? So I think as leaders we need to plan, but on variations we must remain resilient, and that is where the point is, which have been spoken of by the senator. It is education. It's about resilience. It's about knowing facts. So I think that's what we need to really take in mind. 2 or 3 very important intakes or the takeaways that I have from here. Please remember, 240 million people is not a small number. We have a global responsibility as global citizens. And that is what we need to carry in our heart. How can we contribute into this intangible and intangible manner is something needs to be kept in mind. I'm not talking of hope alone. These 2 days did not stir about the hope alone, but it did talk about the clear way of the way forward. And I think we talked of technology, we talked of climate change and all those. So I think what needs to be done is very clear. It's only with continuation of policies, a political stability, that we continue to move on and move step forward. It was great mutual learning for the 2 days. Remember, we will have to take tough decisions, and that's for the government to know. There have to be collaborations, and I think very amply pointed out, the collaborations are not easy. The government is not the only body which will do collaboration. And I talk about the skill augmentation, the skill enhancement. With the technology coming in, and we did talk of Philippines yesterday. This is one country which went out of the IMF loans. The major export was the human resource. You go anywhere in the world, the best nurses that you get is from the Philippines. What are we going to do with 67% of these under 30 youth? It's actually become easier. And the hope here is that we're not blank. Let's get that right. And I'm really going to end it not on an optimism note, but on a realistic note. Look at the institutions which develop our skilled force in the complete international standards. I have been to a couple of those there, and there are international bodies there to receive those students straight away and take them abroad. We need to lighten it up. We need to augment it, not a couple of times, but hundreds of times more. The government has to take charge of the whole thing. Private sector has to come in. The universities have to come in. We cannot waste this. आपके कई organizations आपने देखा होगा. It's the same organization. It's just that when money changes, he knows how to utilize those assets. So minerals हैं, बारिश है, पहाड़ियाँ हैं, और you know, you got human resource, everything in Pakistan, but it doesn't matter. How do you want to capitalize it is what is going to be the answer. How are you going to utilize all this is the challenge. But the good thing there that I see, you know, we did talk of economic turnaround yesterday. With a bit of political stability spell that we have, we saw the finance minister was here. We saw the current deficit being leveled off. We saw the inflation coming down. What period are we talking about? Please remember, ये हमारा मुल्क है. इसको हमने ठीक करना है. We cannot expect, and we should not even think about somebody coming and fixing it up for us. These are our issues. We have the capabilities. We have the right people to understand. We really need to integrate. So you have a finance minister who is completely a private sector man, and he decides to take up this challenge. And we met a couple of times and he says, yes, I will fix it. Now that's the kind of spirit, that's the kind of jazba jo dil mein hona chahiye ki usko kar rahe. Similarly, I think we talked of digitalization. Who is the secretary, MOIT? Again, a competent corporate man, Zarar, and he decided to do it. And he said very clearly, I know that I won't get anything out of it personally, but I have learned all this during my times and when I was abroad, and I want to fix it. Now, ये जज्बा है जो लेके आगे चलना है कि मुझे अपनी कैपेसिटी के अंदर किन किन चीज़ों को ठीक करना है. This is collaboration. This is where the public and the private sector get together and move the country forward. Very quickly, how can this technology make a difference? At the MOIT level, and government is fixing up, there's new authority coming up, the digital authority, the digital Pakistan is coming up, you'll have the FBR being digitalized. Now, those are all fine, but I think some point came out very nice. If you can't, with this technology, impact humanity, the people, you can't bring them happiness, prosperity, honestly, there's no use of doing this. Within 3 months of USF, Universal Service Fund, bringing internet to a village, a remote village in KPK, 3 months down the line, and they go back to see what has happened. There are girls in that area who are teachers, and they're being asked, have you used the internet? And it must have been very easy after that. You got the ChatGPT and everything. The girls saying, ChatGPT is just an aid. I am supposed to know the needs of my children and use all these aids suitably. Look at the impact and how quickly does it come. Within 3 months, the freelance training starts for the people and they start earning money. Now, technology is something, the key. We need to bring it up for the betterment of our people. On the climate change, I just have one point. We did talk about it yesterday a lot. Climate change will have, we like it or not, we're one of the first 6 countries to be vulnerable at. We'll have to know how the funding is to be acquired, how the bankable and the feasible projects have to be done. But there's only one thought which bothers my mind. There's a lot of developing countries who are working around for this funding, and this funding is not greatest, this is a loan. But then we did not cause it. It was the industrial revolutions, the wars going up. So it was West which happened to impact those. But then countries like ours are made to pay for it and of course made to struggle for it. Last point is, it's only through the education and the women empowerment and the women inclusion that this country can progress. I wish you all best of luck, and thank you very much for very active participation and taking this country a step forward. Well done and great job. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Air Chief Marshal Sohail Aman. What really stuck with me is that we have a global responsibility as a global citizen, so let that sink in. And what an impressive career, and what a way to end this summit. So thank you all so much for being here and being on stage. And we will now begin the final presentation of the souvenirs. So could I please invite Rabia Ahmad and Usman Yusuf to join us on stage for the final presentation. And the souvenirs will be presented by Senator Dr. Musadik Malik, the Federal Minister of Energy for the Petroleum Division, to give the souvenirs to the guests. Okie dokie. We will be, Dr. Ishrat Husain will now be presenting these souvenirs, so may you all please stand up for the presentation. So ladies and gentlemen, can we give a huge round of applause for our speakers? So firstly, could we please give a souvenir to Simon Atkinson, the Global Chief Knowledge Officer of Ipsos. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause. Thank you. Let's keep the round of applause going. We've reached the end of the summit. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. For our next souvenir, could we please present Professor Mark Turrell, founder of Undavos, the CTO of Fresh Solutions AI and CEO of Orcasai UK. Give Mark a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. And could we please now present Akif Saeed, the Chairman, Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan, with his souvenir. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let's keep the round of applause going. We've reached the end of the summit. Let's give them some energy. And Dr. Ishrat Husain will be presented a souvenir by Asfar. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a round of applause. And Air Chief Marshal Sohail Aman, could you please join us on stage for the souvenir? Please also present Zafar Masood, the chairman of Pakistan Banks Association and president and CEO of the Bank of Punjab, with his souvenir. And Adnan Rizvi, the managing partner of KPMG Pakistan. Can we please give him a round of applause?
And now I want to acknowledge the wonderful moderation in last 2 days by Jules Smith. She's here from London. We met first time in Riyadh and then we became friends and I invited her to Pakistan. I informed her that Pakistan is a land of opportunity. You should explore Pakistan. Now finally she is here. She's in love with Pakistan in the last 48 hours, and now she's here for next 48 hours also. So Jules, please receive your book from Dr. Ishrat Husain. So Sohail Saab mentioned about the continuity of the Future Summit. And this is our tradition to announce the next year edition dates during the closing ceremony of the Future Summit. So this was the 8th edition of Future Summit. Dates are November 6 and 7. So next year dates for the 9th edition of the Future Summit are November 5 and 6, 2024. 2025, sorry. This is about the future actually. So always we announce the venue as the Movenpick, but yesterday actually we faced serious troubles despite the excellent hospitality of Movenpick management, the delicious food, efficient service, but this hall is now small for us. And yesterday this was a gathering of 1,200 people, so venue I'm not announcing this time, we will announce the later, but dates are November 5, 6, 2025. So my closing remarks is that I'm again grateful to all our speakers, all the speakers from Pakistan, all the speakers from outside Pakistan, our friends from different countries, our partners, our supporters, our collaborators, and most importantly, the wonderful audience here from all over Pakistan and other countries. I also want to acknowledge the wonderful efforts by our co-host, Unity Foods Limited, Farooq Amin, Amir Shahzad, Nagin Rizvi. Nagin is here. Nagin, please join us here. So this is a wonderful collaboration every year since last 3 years in Karachi and Islamabad. And I want to acknowledge, without any formality, the best team in Pakistan, which is actually the Nutshell Group team. And I want to invite all the team members of Nutshell to please join us here. All the team members, please, you join us here. Not only the management, but also all the team members, please join us here. Dr. Ishrat Husain is already your big fan, always acknowledge and support and mentoring us. So all the team members, you are requested to join us. And my request to all my friends sitting in the hall to please, again, once more, big clap for the Nutshell team. So Nutshell is actually a family. And now our size is 75 team members in Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, and Dubai. And now we are starting our operations in Riyadh as well. But one thing I want to highlight here, that I became the chairman of Nutshell 4 months back. And we appointed the new CEO, which is actually Rabia Ahmed, who is the shareholder director also. We also promoted 2 wonderful ladies. One is Uneza Ahmed. She is now the Chief Operating Officer for Middle East Operations, as well as Mehrunisa Azhar, who is the CEO for Pakistan Operations. So this is a genuine acknowledgement and recognition also for the women leadership in Nutshell. The 3 rock stars, all 3 are women, Rabia, Uneza, and Mehrunisa. Thank you everyone, and the tea is ready. Now I'm joining the group, and all of you are requested to enjoy your tea. Pakistan Zindabad.